Hello, and you join me trying to work out how to get some streaming software working and also how to get you ready and prepped for completing your own sound documentaries. So you should by now have a script put together and you are hopefully got some idea of whether you are looking at a theme, whether that's similar to the water ones that you looked at with Chris, or whether you are looking at analysing tracks from one game in particular and looking at 5 different tracks from either that theme or that game so that you can break it down and have a look. Now I'm trying to join in, if you like, and show you what to do in terms of putting a video together and different ways that you could look at it just by starting this lesson off with a bit of a video. So I'm using some streaming software, I'm using some OBS stuff. If I glance kind of the wrong way and I'm looking at the camera all the time, then it's because I've got a second screen over here which you can't see but has got some bits on there which I'm going to share with you and go through. Alright, so you should, like I say, have an idea of what you are going to do and what you are going to look at. I'm going to share with you some thoughts around my ideas and if it was me doing it, what I would look at, just to give you a bit of a steer, and then hopefully you'll be able to go from there and have a little look at what you could do. Alright, so let's jump to me in the corner, and on screen you've got some of the main points that Chris has gone through with you already. So looking and analysing the different emotions that you might find in your tracks, the different use of instruments, any inspiration or composers. So that doesn't have to be game related. So you could be inspired by film composers, or you could be inspired by music from different media that might link into the games that you're looking at. The big one there is, how does it affect the player? Does it change the way you're playing the game? Does it give you cues about what's happening in the game? Whatever it might be, how does the music flow through and change the game player's experience of whatever you've looked to analyse? And then finally, your conclusions. What works? What didn't work? If it was you, what would you do better? And going from there. All right, so my ideas. Let's get rid of the text and let's bring up my first one. So my first one would be looking at Uncharted. The Uncharted series, one of my favourite series, and all of mine, I've chosen 3 today just to go through, and all of mine kind of go through a different theme of these kind of action games, unashamedly big kind of AAA games that I kind of really enjoy, and really enjoy just kind of throwing myself into these kind of characters and following the stories. And Uncharted has been kind of my favourite for a long time, running through the different stories of Nathan Drake and how he's kind of developed as a character and how the games have developed themselves. So a bit of footage on the screen right now. I am being a bit cheeky because I'm just using this to test this out and seeing if it works. So you can give me any constructive feedback as we go through the lesson. But just for those of you that don't know, you've got a little bit of gameplay on screen there, so you get an idea of what it's all about and what the type of game it is. But let's just jump and have a little listen at some of the tracks. So I'm only going to pick one, so I'm just going to pause from there, and then let's bring up my Spotify, just so you can. I'm going to have to look at the other screen, I'm afraid, on this one. So I've picked track 3 on the soundtrack, and it's The Lure of Adventure. And let's have a little bit of a listen. Just trying to go back to start. So it starts really slowly, and I could have gone for one that kind of is the big menu theme that starts, but I really kind of enjoy this piece of music as it builds. And it reminds me of Indiana Jones movies, basically, when they're kind of finding a tomb or they're near somewhere important, and you've got this soundtrack playing in the background that's building more and more as it goes forward. I'm just going to scan and jump a little bit. So you can hear it building even more now. And for me, it gives a real sense of the character developing in the storyline, developing through this certain mission, whatever it might be that they're on. They've kind of got through the scary bit. They're now kind of trying to find what's going on, trying to find whatever it is, whatever the MacGuffin is for that part of the story. It picks up in speed as well, so the adventure and the action that might be happening on screen is picking up as well. Right, let's pause that there. So that's Uncharted, just a small bit. I'm not going to go into kind of too much detail because this is just to give you a sense of what you could be looking at. But thinking about how different soundtracks and how different plays can develop as you go through a game. And like I say, all of mine are these big AAA action adventure games that I really enjoy, and the different ways that themes can play. All right, number 2. So for me, sorry, just finding my mouse again. One of the games of the year is Spider-Man. So playing away, we've got no audio. That's all right, we're not meant to have audio now. So hopefully you've all had a bit of a look at Spider-Man. Some of you may have played it. The thing I love most about Spider-Man is the way that the music interacts with the gameplay. So yes, you've got this big narrative and you've got these big action points that Spider-Man promises in the trailers, and if you've played it, you know as well, kind of delivers in the gameplay. But what I love is kind of the simplicity of how they kind of use their music, but how effective that simplicity is. So when you're stationary and you're sitting on top of a building, and the music goes really quiet and it drops. And to a point where it's not even playing if you kind of hang around for long enough. And then the moment you jump off that building, it kicks in again, and then you're away, and the music builds and builds, and obviously as you go through different action adventure scenes within the game, then it kind of gets even more frantic. So a little example of some of that music as you might be jumping off. So let's jump back to my Spotify for you, and should be able to find Spider-Man in there, and I just want you to play you Golden Age. So you've got quite a big sound already, but what's tricky to imagine, and when it's not on screen, what I can try and do as that's playing, I'm going to pull up the trailer again. So hopefully you start kind of seeing a bit of gameplay as it goes on. This track's called The Golden Age, and it's one of the first few tracks. I think it was track 4. So it's one of the first tracks that you kind of hear as you kind of doing one of the big action scenes at the start, if I remember rightly. You've got those big anthems playing in the background, and the kind of voices as well coming in. And what you've got to imagine is how this sounds to the player as they're swinging through the kind of huge landscapes of New York within the game, kind of swinging through building to building, kind of leaping and kind of jumping and kind of involving yourselves in all types of different action sequences. So for me, the music really plays well within Spider-Man, and just adds to the story in a huge way. Alright, let's look at the last one. Let's just pause the music and let's just do Spider-Man. And the last one for me is The Witcher. So, not as new a game, but still fairly infamous, I would say, to those of you. And this is a different setting, so we're kind of away from present day. We're away from what we might know as kind of a normal setting, or a setting that we can relate to, and we are in these kind of fantasy realms, and we are in these huge kind of landscapes set in the Richmond Riviera as you go through. And the track that I was going to choose for this, there was a couple that I wanted to choose because I will listen to this all the time, this soundtrack. So there was a few on here that I could pick from. But let's just have a quick look. I'm just going to leave The Witcher playing in the background. So there's a couple on here, and the first one is The Trail, which is the track that plays as you load it up. And it's different in the sense that it's kind of the voice that kicks in. But every time I load the game up, and I will still go back to this and play through different bits and pieces, it's that kind of initial kind of hit of that voice and this playing underneath the menu as you're getting ready and to load the game in, and just even that sets it up really nicely. The track that I actually wanted to listen to, let me just pause the trail, is Geralt of Rivia. And this does amazing things in terms of setting up a character. So if that was your theme and what you were looking at, we'll just jump back to The Witcher playing on screen. And the way this track builds, and it starts slowly, and it's the signature tune of our main character of Geralt as you're playing through. And the whole track, it's, how long is it? 2 minutes and 22, but the whole track could tell you the whole story of The Witcher 3 in those 2 minutes 22 seconds as it builds through. So it starts off slowly. I'm just going to skip and jump a little bit. Well, actually I'm not going to, because it's just building at the moment. Let's just bring it up in. So you start to hear those big sounds as it's coming along. We're just about halfway through the track as it's going on. And for me, this kind of gives a sense of the anguish of the character, and the different choices that he has to make, or you have to make as you go through and as you play as him. It's a very kind of noticeable soundtrack as I'm playing it, as I listen to this kind of when I'm not playing the game. And you could set this to any superhero movie. You could set this to anything that you might find in the cinema at the moment, and it wouldn't seem out of place. Right, that'll do us. Alright, so just 3 tracks there that I chose just to go through and have a little look at. Just a few examples of what you could pick up on as you're going through. So remember, we're looking at emotion. We're looking at, let's get them back on screen. Let's lose Spotify. And let's bring up our text. Let's just do the whole piece so we can see it. So emotion, instruments, inspiration and composers. How does it affect the player? And then finally your conclusions. So remember, that's what you always need to be coming back to as you go through. And you've looked at different examples that Chris and I have shown you that you can pick out on. The last thing that I wanted just to highlight to you, I don't want to do a big kind of Premiere lesson or anything today, but just up on screen, let's get rid of the text so you can actually see it. There you go. Just up on screen is just an example of something I was working on a little while ago, but in Premiere, just remember the layers that you've got as you're putting together your work. So you've got audio that might be playing to the soundtrack that you're talking about. You've got the voiceover as well. So you don't need to be on screen like I am at the moment, but you've got the voiceover as you're going through, picking up and explaining what you're trying to analyze. Think about how you might dip one audio so that you can hear the other as you go through. So you can see on this track here, just this grey line here, that audio is dipped really low so that the voiceover that's on this can be heard, and the explanations can be going through as well. Think about how you could tweak your video to make it look really professional. You'll see that I've got just a little logo in the top right hand corner on this one, and a little lower third as well where it says stick bold there. Think about how that could work. as you put your video together. So hitting those near professional qualities for the distinction criteria as you go, and then just remember the 5 things that you're looking at: the emotions, the instruments, your inspiration, how does it affect the player, and then finally your conclusions. Right, so you've got a sense of what it should be looking like, you've got a sense of what you should be including. Hopefully that's not been too cringy. It's been all right for me kind of playing around with this and having a setup and having a play. Now it's over to you. Think about your script, think about how you're planning that out and what you need to say and when you're going to say it, when you're going to bring the tracks in, when you're going to bring footage in on screen to explain a little bit more visually what you're talking about as well, so that you can link it all together. All right, good luck, over to you.